You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact, because it's the only logical podcast to listen to. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This week we were watching Sarek, which was written by Peter S. Beagle, Mark Cushman and Jake Jacobs, and directed by Les Landau. It first aired the week of May 14th, 1990. James, what is it all about?
Legendary Ambassador Sarek boards the Enterprise in order to finalise a historic treaty with the Legarans. However, all is not well, as Sarek appears to be losing control of his emotions, crying at a Mozart recital. Meanwhile, tensions are rising among the crew, with apparently random outbursts of anger. Picard and Crusher determine that Sarek is suffering from a rare Vulcan mental illness, Bendai syndrome, and he is losing control of his emotions and projecting them onto the crew. It seems the diplomatic mission will fail, unless some way can be found to help Sarek regain control.
Well, Alex, it's the original series meets the next generation for the first time in any meaningful way. What did you think of it?
Well, in the last episode, we were complaining a little bit that Trek has a problem with its mysteries, and quite regularly has the, hey, what's going on here? Could it be this thing? Yes, it is. And that is very much this episode. So it's to the episode's credit that doesn't massively detract from it. The fact that you already know the outcome at the outset is not a hindrance to enjoying the episode overall.
It's not so much a mystery, though, as a denial, which I think is a different way to play it. I feel that as an audience, we're very much aware from the outset that something is up. You have it starting with a captain's log, bringing us up to speed in case we're confused about what time period it is. Just like his first wife, his new wife, because the other one has died in the intervening years. Just in case, she's also human, just so you know. We're in a different time zone, but you might recognise this character. We're in a different time zone right now. But they're coming on board ship. You've got his entourage coming on board ship just to make sure that everything is above board and that nothing is out of place. And no one will disturb Sarek, because Sarek needs his space.
The Ambassador will not come aboard if the brown M&Ms are not removed from the ship first.
And it could be like that, but it is very much I think nicely underplayed. I think they get that right. Well, he's got his sort of personal assistant and then his guardian who's managing the events, but it's yeah, I think that's quite nicely played. You've got the distance between almost the crew and the Ambassador. He's almost too important to even deal with Picard. You actually have several scenes in this where you have Picard almost going, oh, I've got to go and do this. It's my duty. I don't want to face this, but captain's life, hey, could you maybe do it? I don't know. So yeah, there's a different kind of power play present in this episode as well.
And I think all of these scenes function very well in playing the importance of the character coming aboard, because obviously you're going to have a split of the audience. You're going to have some people who are familiar with this character from the past Star Trek, but then you'll equally have a sizable chunk of the audience who have absolutely no idea. And I think it treads that nice middle ground of being able to play why this is significant without having to bang on repeatedly going, it's Spock's dad. All right, just in case anyone wasn't clear, Spock's daddy.
It's very much an episode that is driven by a guest star, which is reasonably rare. It's not altogether, but it is like Star Trek royalty has come on board, and you go, we are dedicating the time to this actor, and we're going to make it meaningful, and we're going to make it count, because it could be very gimmicky. Like if you found Scotty in a transporter or something like that. But I think this is very respectfully done, and it has to be a good script. I think if you're going to bring in stuff from the original series, you have to make it good.
Yeah, you can't just get an old actor from the original series and just put him in very old makeup.
No, I mean that would be terrible. And say, look, we like your performance here, DeForest, but could you be a bit more southern? Because that's how old people sound. We want it basically so no one can recognise that you're playing the character you made so famous and is so well admired. It's an important episode in terms of Star Trek: The Next Generation, but it's also very well done. I think if it was just, oh, here's Harry Mudd's granddaughter, you'd go, oh, don't do that. That's just rubbish. It's got meaning because Sarek is an important figure in the Federation and Vulcans live a long time, so it all feels very natural. It doesn't feel shoehorned in either. And they've got an important story to tell as well.
Or it could be worse, of course. It could be, hey, look, it's Harry Mudd, bearing no resemblance to the character that was previously there. At least it's played by Rainn Wilson.
The side plot, the excuse for all of this, is a trade deal between the Federation and the Legarans. And the Legarans, I imagine, are comedy aliens, given that they need to set up a stinking tank for them. And you know, as soon as I saw that scene between Geordi and Wesley, everyone's least favourite double act, where they were going, oh well, God, this stinks, doesn't it? And I just thought, you're racist. You're racist about all the aliens. You've got form for this. You don't like any culture that's different. This diverse federation, it's not really as diverse as you make out, is it?
Say what you want, Wes. It's a slime pit, but to them it's home. Where did you say they're from again? Florida. It's very psychedelic, that slime pit, though, isn't it?
I quite liked it.
It's like some sort of Pink Floyd in the UFO days. Just this colourful light show going on, which is in complete contrast with what they want for the just stark light blue walls.
Yeah, it's very much a bit of colour in what is a fairly dark episode. And, you know, we talk about episodes being about something. How do you take a real life situation and put a science fiction spin on it? And this is succumbing to old age and a mental disease, something like Alzheimer's, losing control, and that is very interesting, and it has so much more impact because we know Sarek and we know that he is this great mind and this great diplomat, someone who's so revered, and to lose all that, it gives the episode proper stakes.
Well, and indeed, if we don't know Sarek, because, you know, as I say, that's a fair chunk of the audience as well, they do a good job in setting it up to show why it's important. Having Picard really revere the man, we don't tend to often get that, and it's played just well enough to get you invested.
I think it is enhanced by Sarek being such an important character in Star Trek lore. If it was just a random Vulcan ambassador, which I believe they considered because they didn't want to overtly reference the original series, it wouldn't have had as much weight with the people who know the character of Sarek. You know, they'd have been sitting there thinking Picard's bigging up this great man, just like he has several times in the past over various people who've come on board.
I mean, I guess you could have done this episode in a comedy way with Lwaxana Troi and her putting all her sort of menopausal emotions onto all the crew, and maybe, you know, they end up falling in love with different people. But I mean, that would just be silly, wouldn't it?
They'd never do that.
They would never ever do that. I find it quite difficult to talk about, you know, individual sections of this episode, because it is very much one of those lots of people in rooms having conversations episodes. It's proper Star Trek: The Next Generation, because not a lot of action's actually happening. There's
a fight.
Well, there is, and yeah. So the main set pieces are the concert, which I think is just, there's something about classical music and close-ups which is just incredibly powerful. I think it just has the epic, almost operatic quality. Just the Brahms playing and the tear coming from Sarek, and I think that's just such a good scene.
I do feel that Picard oversold how spectacular that evening was going to be, though, because he makes it sound like, we really pull out all the stops. It's going to be one of the most extravagant affairs that the ship has ever seen, and really what it is a very small lecture theatre, almost like a sort of university seminar, with a few musicians at the front.
They hadn't even sold half the tickets. He needed to get people in.
The thing is, Wesley says it wasn't an official function. And I think you have got the Federation's greatest ambassador on board ship, and you're having a concert, and that's not an official function. Why the hell not?
We don't want the riffraff, basically.
Quite right too. You wouldn't want Wesley there.
No jeans, no trainers.
So the plot bit, the bit that's not so interesting, is the crew start fighting with each other. They just start losing it and getting angry and getting a bit shouty with each other. And
they get personal.
Oh my, do they get personal? I mean, I think that conversation between Wesley and Geordi might be writers expressing their frustration with the characters in some way.
Compared to you, every male on this ship is an expert on women. At least I don't have to find my women on the holodeck.
I mean, brilliant. Like, that's exactly what you want to hear. I mean, I for one am surprised that Wesley, who's 17, is going out with an ensign who must be a minimum of 21. I'm not sure how comfortable I am with that.
She might be an alien, and like Kez on Voyager is actually only like 5,
which makes it fine. I do feel it's a bit lads bants though. I feel they've got not like the worst lads in the world, but I do feel they're both still objectifying that crewman who we never see and never gets to speak. Yeah, I wasn't that keen on that, but I suppose if you've got to create some kind of conflict in a show where there's never conflict, that'll do. At this point in the episode, you might think it's just Wesley is the common factor, because then he goes and has a conversation with his mother where she hits him, and you think
that was my favourite bit of the episode.
You just think everyone's wanted to do that for a very long time. I mean, Beverly in particular, the mother who left her son on a starship to go and take a better job, she's been repressing that for quite some time. I was just so angry. It's like, yeah, we can all identify with that. Then Councillor Troy, crucial. Yeah, lots of people have been saying this sort of thing. Lots of anger on the ship. What can you do?
I think this might be linked to the crying. Really?
It's sort of perfunctory, but I do like I love the brawl, which is to show how out of control it has got, and it feels a little bit original series, but like some of these stunts are actually fairly brutal. It's quite big scale. I mean, whenever I think of Star Trek brawls, I think of the Trouble with Tribbles, which is just glorious. I would very much have hoped for a lineup with Picard going down the line and them going, "I don't know, sir." That would have made it. O'Brien, you love a scrap, don't you? Who started this?
I mean, I don't expect to see a bicycle gag in Star Trek, and I was very pleased to see one. It just lightens the mood, and what is otherwise a fairly sort of depressing affair, I suppose, perhaps. especially if you're sort of relating it to real life illnesses like Alzheimer's, for example. It does just help to balance the tone a bit.
The balance that they've achieved, it's quite impressive, really. This could have been quite offensive, really, but it's not. It's even with all the silly back and forths between Geordie and Wesley and barroom brawls, it's still overall quite sensitive to senility.
It doesn't try to solve the problem, really, either. There's no magical cure for this.
It does. That's my one criticism, that the little bit of a kind of sci-fi patch up to the issue so that the day can be saved.
Yeah, but then you get at the end, which I realise we're skipping all over the place, but at the end I was really expecting them to go the full puncture repair, and they have that line of, what will happen to him now? Well, we'll take him back to his home planet. Right, and then will something happen? No, he'll be very much an outcast. He's quite ill, and to many people he'd be considered a freak, to be honest, on that planet. Oh well, bye. That really surprised me. There was no simple solution. Beverly didn't suddenly find some wonder cure.
You have the science fiction, let him have his final moment of glory, but that's exactly what it is. It is, he is going to die soon. And I quite like that brutality of it. I quite like that reality. I think it feels very sincere. And of course the mind meld is something that is established in Star Trek. It's not like they've pulled this out of the hat. It fits in with the Vulcan mythology, and it absolutely fits in with this character. And I suppose that brings us to the other big set piece, which is the mind meld scene.
I mean, let's call it what it is. It's probably the finest bit of acting that we've had in any of these episodes, and it's a real reminder of why Patrick Stewart is obviously a world-class actor and continues to be so today. And if any of our listeners ever get the chance to see him on stage, obviously that's a highly recommended thing to go and do.
That scene in another actor's hands, it could have been so drama school, run through the gamut of your emotions. But it's powerful because Patrick Stewart is excellent, and it's just, for him to turn on that dime, from the anger and the regret to just that semblance of recognition. It's indescribable, and it is brilliant. I would say I think they overused the music a bit in the background there. I think you could have let it speak for itself. I think the score is doing a bit of work there, which I don't think it really needs to do.
He also channeled Mark Leonard very well. He did seem to be trying to emulate Mark Leonard here, without being overt as well. This definitely isn't something that any of the other captains could have done. No offence to them.
I mean, Avery Brooks did breakdowns quite effectively, but I think he's a very stylized actor, whereas I think Patrick Stewart can really do anything. It's just a fabulous scene, and it just proves his value to the show, and how much he does elevate it, essentially. In some ways, it is a great kind of two-hander, this show, because you've got Mark Leonard, who's giving a sort of tour de force performance, and Patrick Stewart, who you just know is class. So we're lucky to have this kind of episode.
It does make you think. It's unfortunate that a lot of kind of Shakespearean actors, classic actors, turn their nose up at Star Trek when it is capable of giving them opportunities to put in a really strong performance. I think a lot of them look to an episode like Trouble with Tribbles and think, it's just a silly comedy in space, because that's the well-known episode.
To be fair to them, though, we've also had some episodes with some terrible fish masks.
Yeah, and
Remember that one with all the dry ice and the fish and Wesley and...
Yeah, that was another Loaxana Troy episode.
But that's not to say, that the original series, like, the counterpoint to this is Journey to Babel, isn't it? Which is, again, has got a lot going on in it, about fathers and sons and that kind of relationship. Quality drama there too.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticising Trouble with Tribbles. I watched it recently and I was incredibly impressed by William Shatner because he knew it was a comedy and played it absolutely perfect. But you could not get a performance like this in the original series. The closest I can think of is Spock doing a mind meld with an alien in a cave going, pain!
I don't know if there's much to say because it is very much conversations, Picard's talking to Perrin. I suppose we should talk about that. Slightly, I don't know about that character, slightly enigmatic performance, I feel. I'm not sure how she's playing it. We know that the Entourage are trying to hide Sarek's illness from the crew and everyone else, but she seems to be, I don't know, just a little aloof.
I did enjoy the scene where he turns up to invite her to the concert and she reacts almost at first as if he's asking her on a booty call.
That was a very strange encounter.
Yeah.
That's the counterpoint to Patrick Stewart's acting tour de force. He's being very overly nice, maybe.
I was just wondering if you were free this evening, if you'd like to come with me into a big hall and watch a fiddle.
It did seem like he was maybe hitting on her, maybe. Maybe I'm reading into it wrong.
I don't know. I don't find any way into that character. But then I don't know if that's that different from Amanda, because maybe it's quite difficult to understand, a human falling in love with a Vulcan. Of course, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films deal with that in so much depth, and you really get to understand that kind of relationship.
Well, Enterprise actually does it quite well.
Enterprise does do it very well. Yeah. I think I like the performance because I don't really understand her, but it's a little bit frustrating because I don't have any point of identification. I don't really know what her motives are at any point, other than maybe just being the ambassador's wife, and that just means you've got to have that distance.
She even says herself, nobody has any interest in her at all. Which, of course, Picard replies with, "Oh, I can't believe that."
Yeah, it feels underwritten. But you don't tend to notice it that much. It's just... she's just presented as another one of the people trying to mask the problem. That she's his wife isn't really played into more than that, really.
She doesn't seem to be masking the problem. She seems to be a bit in denial, but she's not exactly hiding it. It's almost as if she's denying it to herself, so she doesn't mind taking him to the concert because she doesn't believe there's anything wrong with him. I'm reading far too much into the character because I want there to be more there.
I suppose the thing is, we never see the negotiations with the Legarans, which, have been building up for decades, apparently, and then we don't actually see it. I'm happy at that, though, to be honest.
Oh, I'm so happy we didn't see
Were you expecting fish people?
Yeah, no, genuinely, that's what I was expecting. I was braced for that to come in, and that to be the ending. And when he just slinks off into the room, I thought, oh, thank God. Yeah, no, that's absolutely the best thing they could have done. What this episode didn't need was another long talking scene. And to be honest, what would you have done with that scene? Let's be realistic. if you were doing that scene, all you could really have done for any dramatic interest is to have Sarek there and then start to lose control of the mind meld temporarily and start to have his emotions spill out, only to then regain control and complete the meeting. And even just describing that, Christ, that's dull and cliched. But what else would you have done? Because otherwise it literally would have been just watching the dry negotiation happen. That's all you could have done. So it's better to just skip it out entirely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any great filmic representation of being an ambassador, unless it's just like he brings out the Ferrero Rocher.
I was going to say, you are forgetting about the world-class acting on those Ferrero Rocher adverts. I mean, that is the one issue that I did have with that concerto. You know, they're putting on a reception for the most legendary ambassador of all time, and not one pyramid tray of chocolate comes out. I thought it was a bit lackluster.
But anyway, I enjoyed this episode, and you should too.
As say our sponsors, Ferrero Rocher.
Ferrero. Well, on that note, let us move over to the place we call Quickfire.
Quickfire.
Data goes on about how he can replicate the styles of various players. Are we supposed to be impressed by that? Because essentially, being a machine, that is the equivalent, in my mind, of jukebox.
I think they touch on that a little bit throughout the whole course of the show. It's just this episode is way too packed to bother. They just wanted somebody to be there playing, and Data's shown interest in it in the past, so we might as well have him instead of O'Brien.
Yeah, did he not even get his cello out?
No, I don't think he did. I think he was literally just Transporter Chief. This episode marks the first appearance of Ensign Gates, one of the Enterprise's many flight controllers. She would appear in, and Memory Alpha is a bit hazy on this, I believe it's 45 more episodes.
I thought it was 35. That's what I read somewhere.
It says on Memory Alpha 36 episodes, I believe, but it lists 45 episodes that she's in, so she might not play Ensign Gates in every one.
That is right, she has been a background artist, but now she's Ensign Gates, so she was always Ensign Gates. Just like Lieutenant Leslie in the original series.
So, the article for her on Memory Alpha lists memorable quotes, course plotted, sir. And that's it.
Sarek was originally written into a very early draft of yesterday's Enterprise, but that involved many time-travelling shenanigans which never made the final cut, so it's good that they actually found a use for him here.
That would have been terrible.
This episode is generally regarded as the point at which Star Trek The Next Generation could use more elements from the original series and move towards a more cohesive universe. Up until this point, they'd never mentioned Spock, and here they mention Spock. So I think that's a big step in terms of The Next Generation. Wouldn't it be weird if he actually turned up on the show? Crazy.
Wouldn't it be weird if he had a sister that had been cruelly overlooked by her father?
That would be that, but that wouldn't happen. That's ridiculous.
It's quite admirable that Next Generation said they wanted to apply their own identity, even though the first 2 seasons were rubbish. And now we have Discovery, which is just repeating and not forging its own identity in any way whatsoever. And okay, Enterprise tried to create its own identity and was very unpopular because of it. You know, they changed certain backstories and then had to fix them in season 4. But it was admirable that, again, they, even though they were doing a prequel, tried to do it their own way. And we now have Discovery, and they don't seem interested in doing their own thing.
Well, maybe we can look back more fondly on Enterprise now with the years that have passed. After all, It's been a long time.
Getting from there to here.
Well, even with a good episode, I'd be remiss if I didn't have at least a gander at the Nitpicker's Guide. It seems to have gone a bit weird, though. They seem to have moved into the realm of relationship advice. And they state, personally, I think Wesley would do a lot better with women if he'd remember to zip up his pants. For those of you that don't remember, the pants on Wesley's acting ensign uniform don't close all the way in back. I don't even know what they're talking about.
Hopefully he'll get a different uniform then in a couple of episodes. Ira Bear and Ron Moore did an uncredited page 1 rewrite. Well, we're giving them credit now of this episode. Ira Bear was very keen to mix it up a bit, and he said, I broke open the barrier and made it possible for the next generation to use names like Spock on screen. That was a major taboo when I got there. No way could you mention the original Star Trek characters. It took days of arguing to slip in a single reference to Spock. So I like to think, in my own sort of incoherent way, I helped start to push open the door to what was a very, very closed and narrow franchise. But again, I always come back to McCoy's in the first episode with that.
That was the kind of passing the torch, so it was supposed to be from that point on. They're doing their own thing and will never mention the original series again, except when they do in the very next episode.
As I recall, Gene Roddenberry didn't want them to use Klingons or Romulans or any of the aliens from the original series either, which obviously didn't last to the first 10 minutes of the pilot. That was his original intention. It does seem that most of his original intentions don't really get listened to, though, does it?
Men kissing men, women kissing women.
Well, that I said for that one.
Michael Piller, discussing the subject of telepathic bleeding, said that the episode goes some way to bring home the idea that even the greatest of men is subject to illness. Something we'll see repeated throughout the years in various other media, but perhaps never quite as well signified as Pele's series of adverts about erectile dysfunction. Really, really hitting home. They said to me, Pele, we want to do an advert about how you have trouble with the keepy-uppy, and I've been retired a long time, and I just didn't realise what I was signing up for.
We have the quote, "We shall always retain the best part of the other inside us." I believe I have the better part of that bargain, Ambassador. And 1,000,000 slash fictions were written.
Well, thank you for listening to our sensitive exploration of old age. Next time we will be talking about, oh my god, Menage a Troy. We're all looking forward to that one.
I hope people are turned naked.
You say that every week.
I thought with the last round of Q puns, it couldn't get any worse. How wrong.
Anyway, we're all looking forward to that one. Although this just could be the last episode of First Contact right now. You never can tell. We will be back then. For now, goodbye.
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 What we need is a counterpoint podcast for this. We need Unilad to do podcast reviews of Star Trek The Next Generation. To balance things out.
Oh.
Unilad's First Contact would just be a series of people lying about how they lost their virginity. Oh mate, it was like the best. Said no one ever.
It was definitely an encounter at my point.